I contend that our educational systems are under attack. Our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. It needs to be broken up and rebuilt. We need to redo it. It's a problem. And when I say educational system, I'm not just talking high school. I'm not just talking junior high school. I'm not talking just kindergarten or colleges. I'm talking educational system, all of it. Many schools, especially in our largest metropolitan areas like Dallas, are in crisis. You talk to people who have done well in life. You know what? As I socialize with people and get to know people out when I'm out and about and talking to them and meet their kids, it's very frequent that as I talk to the kids, and when I say kids, I'm talking about when I talk to young adults between the ages of 18 or better yet 16 and 24, I can usually tell the ones that went to private schools versus the inner city schools. I can just tell by their outlook on life, by their perceptions, by their language, by their cadence, by their passion, by their interests. You can too. You can tell. You go out and start talking to 16 to 24-year-olds. You'll be able to identify the ones that come from families where education is important and they put an emphasis on it, and mom and dad make the commitment to put them in private schools or Catholic schools. And you can tell the ones that don't. You can tell the ones that just send them to the local school, especially inner cities. When you look across this country at the inner cities, across this country, the major metropolitan areas, Dallas, LA, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Phoenix, St. Louis, Baltimore, pick a city, Miami. The school districts are under attack. The school systems are broken. The school systems need blown up and redone because they've lost touch with what they're doing. Our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. Many of them in the largest cities are in crisis. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can interact with me across social media at Westside Jeff. You can also call 800-288-9227. A couple producers tonight, Matt and Garrett. In the newsroom, we've got Lori Waffenschmidt. I talk about schools and education. And the reason I do, and it's important to me, is because education is the bedrock of an informed society and the bridge to self-sufficiency. Education is the greatest equalizer. Education can remove the effects of any social inequities between economically challenged and economically advanced. Education and educating those who are economically challenged and stressed allows them to rise up out of poverty. Education is our best chance to overcome poverty. I'm an example of it. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, on the west side of Columbus, a very lower socioeconomic area. Mixture in black and white and immigrants. My dad was a plumber. Yeah, you think plumbers make a lot of money? Maybe they do today. They didn't when I was growing up. My dad was a union plumber. He worked for about 18 months in the union. Then he got tapped on the shoulder and said, you got to sit the unemployment line for 18 months as we put DEI in place and this bring in somebody else that we need to get a job and train. So my dad sat the unemployment line. It killed him. It killed him. When you wanted to see my dad broken down, take the wrenches out of his hand. And when he was unemployed, we qualified for food stamps. We qualified for government assistance, but my parents were too proud for that. My mom went back to work and tried to do what she could. I didn't know I was poor. I didn't know our clothes on my back many times came from Goodwill. I didn't know that the food we ate every night in our home was hamburger. It's just a different kind of hamburger. I didn't know that mac and cheese wasn't a staple of American food. We just made by. We didn't have air conditioning in the house. We set the thermostat higher in the wintertime. It was all about saving money, pinching pennies. We qualified for all the government programs, but my parents were too proud. There were a lot around us that were in poverty. But what helped me break that cycle, by the way, the school I went to West High School at the time, a lot of the boys that went to West High School, they went out, they skipped class, they cut class, they went out and sat in their trucks. They had gun racks in the back of them, smoking dope, drinking beer. Couldn't wait to come out of high school and go to work at the GM plant, get married and have kids. That was their life goal. That was not my goal. That was not what I wanted, because I saw my dad working his butt off to try to supply or support the family. I wanted more. I wanted better. So I took it upon myself to get an education. I took it upon myself to go to college. I worked a lot of jobs, went in debt. My parents did everything they could to help me. I came out of college, and I've done pretty well for myself. But it all started with education. It started with my mom and dad having a sense of, you've got to get an education. They instilled in me how important an education was. And I took the initiative, and I went and got it. I'm not a book smart guy. I'm a street smart guy. But I was able to get through it, make it work, and do good things. And I've done pretty well. Education is our best chance to break the cycle of poverty. Period. That is our best opportunity. We can continue to spend more money on the back end on social services and increase welfare and WIC and all those other programs and pay it down the road, or we can spend the money up front and help them get an education and provide for themselves. When I say education, I don't necessarily mean going to college, getting a 4-year degree and doing that. I'm talking about high schools need to get back to educating and doing the right thing, because they're broken. And part of that includes career tech, skilled trades. Our high schools are not teaching that. It's okay to look kids in the eye and say, if you don't want to go to college, that's okay. What's your passion? Help them find their passion and teach them to be an adult. Teach them to be self-sufficient. In 2023, the U.S. welfare budget was $1.1 trillion, representing 18% of all federal outlays. If we could cut that in half, you know what that would do? You know what that would do for tax implications? You know what that would do for social services? But most importantly, it would help lift people up out of poverty. But see, our educational system is broken right now. I talked a little bit about this last week. I want to get into that next. Got to hit a break. But what I talked about last week and a little bit this week, I've had many people follow up with me and shoot me notes and messages and instant message me across social media. Some of them I've reached out to just to hear their perspective. It's amazing to me how many people I've talked to in the last week, but it's not uncommon, who have shared stories with me of real plight that they've dealt with. They don't want to do it on the air because they fear of retribution, and that is part of the problem. Schools are about retribution. Schools will penalize. Took a caller last week from a guy that is a leader in the community in McKinney, and he detailed what's going on in McKinney. He turned me on to several others, and it was stunning to hear what I heard. I looked up some stories, read them, and it's amazing to me the failure of leadership in McKinney schools. And it's not just McKinney, it's not just Collin County, it's schools across the country. I want to talk about that after my break, and I want to hear from those of you who have specific stories. Whether you're an educator now, whether you're a previous educator, whether you're a parent, I want to hear your stories about confirming what I'm saying. Our educational system is broken. It needs blown up. We need to do it differently, and we need to get back on track. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can reach out to me at 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Westside Jeff is my name, and for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and FM on 93.3 FM WBAP. Our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. Many schools, especially in our largest metros, are in a crisis. Now, in the last 20 years or so, our lifestyle, our culture, our society, our entire way of life has dramatically changed over the last 20 years. I want you to think about what we've gone through in the last, call it 20 years. How we've changed our lives, our lifestyle, our culture has changed more in the last 20 years than it probably did in the previous 100 years. That's the speed at which things are changing. The internet's changed things. AI is going to even change it even more. Industry's changed. The geopolitical system has changed. Migration has changed. Immigration has changed it. And when I say migration, I'm talking about people moving. You know, there once was a time when I was younger that, hell, we had to plan a trip just driving across town. You wouldn't go from Dallas to Fort Worth without it being a major fiasco. Nowadays, you drive to the airport, you get on a plane, 10 hours later, you're on the other side of the country. You're on the other, 24 hours later, you're in the other side of the world. Our educational system has not kept up with those changes. Our educational system is lagging behind. Our educational system is leaving our kids behind. Other countries are moving faster at it than we are. I talked about this a little bit last week that I have 3 teachers independently in the last year that I've talked to. They don't know each other. They're not even in the same state, same district. 3 teachers told me they have kids in their class, high schools, who identify as cats. They call them furries. Now, if you think I'm just making something up and it's a one-off, ask your kids and grandkids, ask younger people you know in schools if they know furries, if they've seen it, if they've experienced it. School systems are buckling to that. One teacher told me that he called the kid in his class who identifies as a furry by the person's name, by their birth name. The furry or the student was offended, told mom and dad. Mom and dad told the administrators. The administrators called the teacher in the office, wrote him up, did a big investigation, and almost fired him over that. Almost fired him. That's woke. That's wrong. And I say kick the furries out. Quite honestly, you remember the debate with Trump where he talked about not furries. He was talking about people in Springfield, Ohio, the immigrants coming into Springfield and eating the cats and dogs and the geese. I say send the furries to school in Springfield, Ohio. That'll straighten them up. That's my attitude. We need to fix our school systems. We got to quit bowing down to those who are marginalized. Don't worry about their gender. Don't worry about their sexual preference. Don't worry about how they identify. Teach them. Teach them, love them, give them an education. That's what we need to do. That story I shared elicited several calls late last week. One of them from administrator here in the area that reiterated exactly what I said. I said it's more prominent. He said parents need to walk through schools and see what the schools are promoting. I've done a lot of that, and it surprised the hell out of me. It'll surprise the heck out of you. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Our educational system is broken, and we need to start younger with education. Preschool's part of that. And instead of free education in college, I say put a little more money into preschool and make education a priority. Again, education's our best opportunity to break the cycle of poverty. What's your take? What's your opinion? You think schools are not broken? You got a story about a school system failing our students? That's our future generation, folks. We got to fix it. Call me, 800-288-9227, like Jordan from Hazlitt. Jordan, thank you for calling. This is the Chris Crock Show, and you're talking to Jeff, Westside Jeff. What's your opinion on this?
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking my call. No, I completely agree with you. My wife is an educator of 17 years. She's taught all the way through elementary, currently pre-K. And even in the pre-K system, it is broken. I wanted her to quit last year. She's on her 17th year, obviously not old enough to retire. But with her administration not supporting her and everything that's just going on. And then I got 2 kids that are in elementary and middle school. I wanted her to stay home with them this year and do homeschool. Obviously, I had the social aspect of it for the kids being social and then being home. I still thought it was better for her, but I think next year we definitely are going to homeschool just because it is broken.
Jordan, do you have a solution based off of from where you're sitting? Give me one thing that you see from where you are that would help improve our educational system. You got one thing?
I mean, support from the administration, I think, is the biggest thing, especially from my wife's perspective. Like, she teaches pre-K. She's in a co-teach class, and still she's got really tough kids, and the administration does not do anything to help support her one bit. And in 17 years, this has probably been her hardest year as a teacher. And she's dealt with tough kids in her 17 years. And this year has been like the backbreaker for her. And it's crazy because she loves kids. She loves, supporting kids, bringing kids up. One of her first kids as a teacher is now a teacher. And she was like, oh, no, I think you went to the wrong field to become a teacher, which is sad for us as a nation.
Spot on, Jordan. Thank you for calling. I appreciate your opinion on that. Jordan, you reiterate what I said. What I'd like to hear is I'd like to open the phone lines. I'd like to hear from listeners. What do you see in schools? What are you experiencing in schools? What have you heard about in your children's school system? What are the problems you're seeing, you're feeling, you're experiencing? And what solutions might you offer? Do you have them? How do we get back on track? My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. My phone number is 800-288-9227. I took a call last night at the end of the show, a guy named Paul, who's a substitute teacher. He said the top problems, his opinion, number 1, cell phones. Number 2, the breakdown of the American family. No fathers in the house that are promoting a good, solid education. And number 3, the culture of money and how schools are funded, because it's about the wallet. I want to hear your thoughts. What's the problem, and what things could we do to solve it? I want to take your calls. I got to hit the bottom of the hour news with Lori Waffen-Schmidt in the newsroom. That's in 2 minutes. 4 minutes later, so 6 minutes from now, we'll continue the conversation with your calls. I'm Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. The phone number is 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So I don't like what's going on in schools. I can give you a ton of stories, which I will sprinkle in along the way, along with your phone calls. Because schools, our school systems, our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. Many schools, especially in our largest metropolitan areas, are in crisis mode. I talked a little bit about this last week. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock. Chris is back here in this chair on January 2nd. Talked a little bit about it last week. Had several folks reach out to me and shoot me notes along the way. And I connected with several of them after the show and throughout just to hear what they had to say. And one of them said to me, Jeff, we need to save our kids. One of them said, one of the parents said that, let me get my notes because I want to get it right, said there's no transparency, there's safety issues in the schools, these kids are under attack, said the school board is all Democrats. One parent said that there was a case in McKinney in particular about a kid being bullied. The school system denied it. Long story short, through lawsuits and all, they got to a discovery phase, and lo and behold, they discovered the parent is right. But the school system tried to cover it up. This isn't just a McKinney issue. This isn't just a Collin County issue. This is an issue in a lot of school systems. This is an issue that's a real problem. And it's going on across the country. We need to fix our school systems. Talk radio is a great place to have that conversation. Talk radio, you shine a spotlight on things and things get fixed. And when I hear people say, I'll talk to you off the air because I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to cancel culture. They're being shamed into darkness. And that is bad. If you want to call in, I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear the stories in our community about our schools that are failing our kids and how we need to blow them up and start over. We need to change our educational system because our kids, you know what? Our kids are coming out of schools today, especially K-12 schools. They're coming out over-medicated. They're coming out of schools indoctrinated and uneducated. And that's going to hurt our country moving forward. I grew up in a really rough neighborhood that was impoverished. Our educational system is the best opportunity, is our only hope to break the cycle of poverty. We got to get this right. We got to get it right now. I want to hear your perspective. 800-288-9227. Let's start with Ginger and Burleson. Ginger, you're on Chris Crock Show. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. What's your story? What's your thought?
Hey, Jeff. I was a substitute teacher in a charter school here in Texas for 1 year. And what I saw was horrendous. Children with emotional problems, with mental issues, and parents that don't support teachers, and administrations don't support teachers because they're afraid of the parents, and they're also afraid of the government. And they can't make the parents mad because they can't lose the kids, and they can't lose the kids because then they lose the funding. And it's a big, huge cycle, and it's not one thing that's going to fix it.
And what you just said is by the way, Ginger, what you just said is one of the parts of the problem. It's about funding. Follow the money. You got to realize that school systems receive money from the government based off of the number of students they have. And the funding in Texas is about, if I understand it right, about $6,100 or $6,200 per student. So if a student attends class and goes to school every day of the school year, they get that $6,200. But for every day they miss and every day they don't show up, every day they wake up and say, Mom and Dad, I don't want to go to school today, it costs them money. So it's about the money. And that's where the problem lies.
The children have zero, and I'm talking zero respect for teachers. And
I know that.
That comes from administrators and from parents.
Ginger, I'll tell you a quick story, by the way, about that. I have a teacher that told me here in the big school system, I'm not going to name the system, he was working in the lunchroom area during lunch. He saw this is a high school, saw a student male go up to a female teacher and sucker punch her, knock her to the floor, knocked her out.
Yeah, right.
She was bloodied. Teachers came. There was a melee there. They didn't call the police because they didn't want the media there. The teacher ended up getting up. They got the teacher in the principal's office. The teacher said she was going to call the police and file a report. And the principal said, if you do, you're fired. Right. The SRO walked in and said, I'll take over. And it never made the news media because it was buried out of fear for what we're talking about. And when a teacher takes a sucker punch, when a teacher gets hit, when a teacher is assaulted in a school by a student, and the administration, the principal says, if you go public on this, your job will be in jeopardy. That's a problem. That reinforces to kids that action is okay, and it reiterates exactly what you just said.
Well, I had a 6th grade girl cuss me out to my face because I told her it was time to come in and sit down and start class. I had 7th and 8th graders refuse to do the assignment on the board because I was a substitute, and how dare me to give them an assignment. I had 3rd grade boys drawing full anatomy of females and discussing it. I had 4th graders caught in the bathroom having sex. Now, this is a charter school, not a huge, gigantic school.
Which is not an inner city school. We're talking about more of a kind of a private school, a charter school.
A charter school in a very prominent area, not in Burleson. That's where I live because I was driving to another city to sub. But I told my husband, I said, we got to pull our son out. And I've been homeschooling our son, who's now 17, since 6th grade. And because it was a battle. The battle of the culture in the school was a big influence on our kids. And I have found that he has become a much better person, much better character, keeping him home. And I have a very tight rein on who his friends are, where he goes. He's 17 and doesn't even have a cell phone because there's no place that he's not with an adult that I And, he has a job now, and his boss does nothing but tell me, this is the best kid I've ever had work for me. He has
homeschooling.
Because we homeschool. And, I think it's sad that people are having to homeschool now because you can't send your kids to school without all of the issues they're going to be bombarded with. And teachers, I feel sorry for them. Because I was one for 1 year, and that's all it took.
Ginger, thank you for calling, and thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate that, and this is exactly what I wanted, because there are parents listening to us now, tonight, not just here in North Texas, but around the region, other states, border states, that are saying, oh, we don't have a school problem, Jeff. It's not that bad. You were a substitute teacher in an elementary school, and you just laid out 7 or 8 stories that reiterate what I'm talking about. And there are people with their head in the sand who don't think it's a problem. And those people own homes, and a large portion of their real estate taxes go to fund those schools. But you see, schools sweep these kinds of stories under the carpet because they don't want you to know about it. But I want to put them out there because I want to reiterate how significant of a problem this is and instill in you to get involved in your school system and to address those problems. Because until we do, our school systems are in crisis mode. I'm talking K-12. Our colleges are too, by the way. And I think I wrote down something you said, our schools are a cultural battle. That's an elementary school. Ginger, thank you for calling. I appreciate it. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can hit me up across social media. I'm at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, and Instagram. Or you can just pick up the phone and call me at 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. Got to hit a quick break, about 3.5 minutes long on the other side of it. I've got Dennis, Jared, and Gail on hold. We got 2 open phone lines. I'd like to hear your story. Our schools need a hardcore reboot, and now. That's my story. I want to hear yours. Westside Jeff in for Chris Kroc on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. I'm talking education. Our educational system needs a fundamental reboot. Many schools, especially in our largest metropolitan areas, are in crisis. And I'm talking elementary, middle school, high school, and colleges. They're in crisis mode. We just heard from a woman who was a substitute teacher, Ginger. She lives in Burleson. She's a former substitute teacher that she taught in another school district. And she shared stories about second, third, and fourth graders doing things that you and I never experienced in high school. We're in crisis mode, folks. Need to fix it. It's our future. If we don't, we'll pay the price in social services later. I want to hear from you. What have you seen? What have you experienced? There are parents that sit out there and say, Jeff, you're blowing it up. You're making it up. You're being an alarmist. Our schools aren't really a problem. Our kids are good. They're going to school. They're getting an education, and they're moving on. I want to hear the truth. I want to hear what you have to say. What have you experienced? What have you seen? This resonates to me from a story I saw in McKinney about a student who's special needs, autistic, maybe high-level functioning student who was bullied, who was beaten. The school system tried to cover it up. Several folks, parents in the community went to the board meetings. The board tried to close him out of it. What an absolute train wreck. I'm going to ask that parent to join me at some point in time, but there's a legal battle there too. And that scenario in McKinney's not just the only one. There's a lot of these. School systems want this stuff covered up. They don't want you and I talking about it because it hurts their funding. It hurts their wokeness. It hurts their agenda. It hurts the teachers union. It's a problem. If you think it isn't, keep listening. You're paying a lot of taxes and real estate to go to schools, and the school system is broken. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff or call me like Dennis from Trophy Club. Dennis called 800-288-9227. Dennis, thanks for holding and thanks for calling. What's your thoughts? What's your opinion? What I'm talking about tonight?
Okay, let me get a couple things through. So about a year ago, my wife's co-worker that live in Denton County at a nice school, her daughter had a child in the class, another child in the class that was a cat. And the teacher put a litter box in the back of the classroom. I said, no, there's no way. You're not hearing it right. Something's crazy. And then I heard you the other night. I'm like, oh, wow, this is a real thing. That's that. So it's actually true. I mean, I'm hearing it. I heard it a year ago.
Dennis, there are people that think I'm making that stuff up. They don't believe it. They've never heard of this. They've never experienced it. I'm glad you shared that story. And the school system, by the way, will penalize teachers and administrators if they actually don't respond to that person as a furry. They're not a person. They're a furry. And that furry will sit there and make sounds of a cat. Those kinds of things. And be very disruptive for everybody else.
I believe you now. Okay, the other thing. When my father graduated college in 1950-something, University of Illinois, they got a degree in architecture. To get his master, only required one more year of college to get his master's degree. Okay. Now colleges are not places of higher education. They're really higher extortions because when my daughters went through school, they just spent the last 4 years in high school taking English, writing, history. Her first year in college was more history, more English, more math. It's like, how much math do you need? All of our friends have college degrees and masters, and none of us have ever used calculus, ever.
Nope.
I don't know why you need calculus if you're never going to use it.
How much more math do you need? You need more math to fund the broken school system. By the way, you're talking colleges. Dennis, one of my problems with colleges is ask the kids that you know who are in college or who are recent grads in the last couple of years. I think it's about 20% or 25% of kids that start college end up transferring somewhere, and not one of them I've ever talked to, all their credits transfer. Why is that? It's a money grab.
It's a money machine. It's a money grab. Exactly. It's not about education. It's not about it. Because if that was the case, then they'd be educated. Okay, the other thing is this. When a student graduates high school, two things are going to happen for the rest of their life. They're going to have to deal with money, and they have to deal with automobiles. But nowhere in college or high school do they ever teach about how money actually works, how a mortgage works, how buying a car works, how interest works, how credit cards work, how any of that stuff works. They don't even know how a car works, even the basics of how a car works. So when you go to the dealer, they say, oh, this is wrong. Okay, just fix it. They have no idea what they're even talking about. So things that you're going to use in the rest of your life, they don't teach you. And then things that you will never use in your life, they're going to teach you. It's They lost sight of what education's about. Kids that graduated in 1900, 8th grade, have a better grasp and understanding than kids that are graduating college today because we lost the basics. My daughter was in German class, and we had videos we watched of exchange students. The kids over in Europe, they spoke multiple language, played multiple instruments, and their English was impeccable for people in Germany. I mean, it's just we have no idea what we're doing over here. I mean, we do. They lost focus of what true education is. And the other thing in Texas is my God, they're spending so much money on college or high school football and stadiums and athletic departments and weight rooms, and we're talking millions and millions of dollars, and that's not education. I mean, that's a very small percentage. And how many people actually go to NFL? So we lost direction there as well. But that's all I got to say.
Spot on, Dennis.
One last thing, parents. They're checking out. So parents think just drop the kids off school and it's done. No, they have to be involved all the way through. You got to hold your teachers accountable if necessary, and the school accountable. Go to the school board. If you got a problem, if my daughter was in that class with a cat, I'd be raising a lot of stink about that and going to the media and going, "This is crazy." But
I'd be loud. I'd be in front of the administration. I would be very, very loud.
You see me on TV is what you see me on.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. And again, we need to shine a light on it. But I'm telling you, you just said it yourself. You thought I was nuts talking about furries in class. You never heard of that before, but you're talking to somebody and you find out right there in your own backyard, you got it. It's disruptive for education. It's real.
Thank you.
Very real. I don't know. Dennis, thank you for calling. I appreciate it very much. I can't tell you how many emails I get nowadays where I see at the bottom of the email their name and their company. I see it says something like identifies as he, him, something. Why are we doing that? That goes back to the whole educational system. Identifies as she, her. Why do we have to do that?